In the mirror of death. My own first experience of death came when I was about 7. We were preparing to leave the eastern highlands to travel to central Tibet. Semten, one of the personal attendants of my master, was a wonderful monk who was kind to me during my childhood. He had a bright, round, chubby face, always ready to break into a smile. He was everyone's favorite in the monastery because he was so good-natured. Every day, my master would give teachings and initiations and lead practices and rituals. Toward the end of the day, I would gather together with my friends and act out a little theatrical performance, reenacting the morning's events. It was Samten who would always lend me the costumes my master had worn in the morning. He never refused me. Then suddenly, Samten fell ill, and it was clear he was not going to live. We had to postpone our departure. I will never forget the 2 weeks that followed. The rank smell of death hung like a cloud over everything, and whenever I think of that time, that smell comes back to me. The monastery was saturated with an intense awareness of death. This was not all morbid or frightening, however. In the presence of my master, Samten's death took on a special significance. It became a teaching for all of us. Samten lay on a bed by the window in a small temple in my master's residence. I knew he was dying. From time to time, I would go in and sit by him. He could not talk, and I was shocked by the change in his face, which was now so haggard and drawn. I realized he was going to leave us, and we would never see him again. I felt intensely sad and lonely. Samten's death was not an easy one. The sound of his labored breathing followed us everywhere, and we could smell his body decaying. The monastery was overwhelmingly silent, except for this breathing. Everything focused on Samten. Yet, although there was so much suffering in Samten's prolonged dying, we could all see that deep down, he had a peace and inner confidence about him. At first, I could not explain this, but then I realized what it came from. His faith and his training, and the presence of our master. And though I felt sad, I knew then that if our master was there, everything would turn out all right, because he would be able to help Samten toward liberation. Later, I came to know that it is the dream of any practitioner to die before his master and have the good fortune to be guided by him through death. As Jamyang Khyentse guided Samten calmly through his dying, introduced him to all the stages of the process he was going through, one by one. I was astonished by the precision of my master's knowledge and by his confidence and peace. When my master was there, his peaceful confidence would reassure even the most anxious person. Now Jamyang Khyentse was revealing to us his fearlessness of death. Not that he ever treated death lightly. He often told us he was afraid of it and warned us against taking it naively or complacently. Yet what was it that allowed my master to face death in a way that was at once so sober and so light-hearted, so practical, yet so mysteriously carefree? That question fascinated and absorbed me. Samten's death shook me. At the age of 7, I had my first glimpse of the vast power of the tradition I was being made part of, and I began to understand the purpose of spiritual practice. Practice had given Samten an acceptance of death, as well as a clear understanding that the suffering and pain can be part of a deep, natural process of purification. Practice had given my master a complete knowledge of what death is and a precise technology for guiding individuals through it. After Samten died, we set off for Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, a torturous 3-month journey on horseback. From there we continued our pilgrimage to the sacred sites of central and southern Tibet. These are the holy places of the saints, kings, and scholars who brought Buddhism to Tibet from the 7th century onward. My master was the emanation of many masters of all traditions, and because of his reputation, he was given a tumultuous reception everywhere we went. For me, that journey was extremely exciting and has remained full of beautiful memories. Tibetans rise early in order to make use of all the natural light. We would go to bed at dusk and rise just before daybreak, and by first light the yaks carrying the baggage would be moving out. The tents would be struck, and the last ones to come down were the kitchen and my master's tent. A scout would go ahead to choose a good camping place, and we would stop and camp around noon for the rest of the day. I used to love to camp by a river and listen to the sound of the water, or to sit in the tent and hear the rain pattering on the roof. We were a small party with about 30 tents in all. During the day, I rode on a golden-colored horse next to my master. While we rode, he gave teachings, told stories, practiced, and composed a number of practices, especially for me. One day, as we grew near the sacred lake of Yamdrak Sao and caught sight of the tortoise radiance of its waters, another Lama in our party, Lama Setun, began to die.